Hello everyone, welcome back to SwitchUp and to our top 10 of the year best games that, well, personally we enjoyed.
Yeah, these are our 10 favourite games of 2024 so far on the Switch, of course, 5 each. So this isn't determined by review scores. I think we have reviewed all of these saying that, but yeah, this is our personal preference, the games we've enjoyed the most.
As always, save yourself a bit of bunts. We have a 5% discount when you buy your eShop credit over at switchup.gg. Thanks very much for watching. Let us know in the comments what your favourites are. Now, what are ours? Well, let's find out.
So I'll start then with 5th place, and mine would be Imagine Earth, which was quite a pleasant surprise when it released a couple of months ago, I believe it was now. And it's like a sim world, I suppose, isn't it? Where you have to colonise a planet, thinking about residential areas, commercial zones, industrial, etc. All with like a futuristic spin. But I found it interesting the way they dealt with still having to go through the stages. You know, in these games you start with basics and you build up. It was almost like everything had been privatised.
Yeah.
And you couldn't just get the best stuff straight away. You had to prove your colony was worthy of it. And that's how you upgraded. I thought that was quite a clever way of dealing with that, you know?
Yeah, the planets that you go on have different biomes and things, don't they? And loads of different resources. And you do have to rely on things like mining and gathering up gold and stuff, don't you, to progress?
You do. And also you have like environmental issues as you go through each planet. So, for example, one of them is using oil as its primary source. And the oil stations have like deteriorated over time and it starts to leak into the sea, which means you don't have as much power, you don't have an alternative source, so you've got to clean it up and rebuild. It's just quite a clever way of dealing with like a story campaign, and it's actually a very good game. It works very well. The controls are sound, which is something you worry about in these sort of games on a console. It did crash a couple of times when I played it, but it's had a patch since which seems to have stabilised it a bit. But yeah, it's well worth playing.
Great game. My number 5 then, obviously we got 5 each to make our 10. My coming in 5th place was Hitman Blood Money. Now this one is one of my favourite in the Hitman series. It's before it all got a bit complicated for me, you know, in the later games. But with this one, it had that old school kind of case in the stage, you know, you'd walk around slowly just examining who did what. You'd see the little catering man come out and fill up his van. You'd have a look at the little CIA agent. I mean, he wasn't little, he was perfectly good height, going in and doing his bits and bobs. And you spend a good, I don't know, maybe like half hour, 40 minutes just working out exactly how the mechanics of each stage work, you know, and how you can get your hopefully complete silent assassin rank by letting no one know, you know, what's just happened. The thing I love with these games is I'm always looking for the accident.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
You know, I'm looking, that swimming pool's a bit close, you know, that bonfire that he's working on, oh, there's some lighter fluid there. I love trying to figure that part of it out. And this one on Switch, I was a little disappointed in terms of things like performance. I think it could have ran a bit better, but it's fine. You know, it's an older game. It still holds up to this day, and it's our only native Hitman game on Switch. So for me, that was just a really pleasant surprise. I didn't expect it this late in the console's life.
And it's important just to reiterate, you know, things like performance and that we'll mention just in case you as a viewer want to know, but we're not factoring that into how we enjoyed them unless it obviously affected our enjoyment. So we'll mention them as out of courtesy for yourselves, but it doesn't matter to us and it won't affect the standing on this list. So with that said, in 4th place for me, I had the recently released Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door. Now I hadn't ever played this before. I'd played practically every other game in the series as it happens, and this one is generally considered to be the best, and I just, for whatever reason, never got around to it. But having played it now, I can certainly see why that is the case. Has that story that's full of charm and humour, perhaps goes on a little bit too much at times. It's a little self-indulgent, certainly when you play as Princess Peach in between chapters, but you know, that doesn't take away from how much fun the actual game itself is. And I've really been, you know, post-review, just going back to it and enjoying doing bits and bobs with it. Sign of a good game, you know?
Absolutely, yeah. I was excited to see what they do with this one, having only played the original in the last year. So it was nice, and great game. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, again, like I said, the caveat with this one is that they'd halved the frame rate from the original from 60 down to 30, just so you're aware. But as far as I was concerned, you know, outside of reviewing it and critiquing it on that, it didn't bother me.
No. My next one then, I guess that would be my 4th. We have Xuanwan Sword 7, which is from the series, the titular series that I'm not going to even try and say a second time. I thought I did pretty well there. That is a series of like RPGs, kind of old school, top down originally. And then in this one, it came into the 3rd dimension, and it feels like, I don't know, like a different type of Witcher. It's an action RPG, but I love the storyline. I thought it was surprisingly good, fully narrated, but genuinely interesting, which you definitely can't say about most action RPGs. You know, it's usually a throwaway big villain comes and does something bad and you have to go and fix that. Here, your sister essentially like loses her soul, and then one of the demon restores her, but in like a ghostly apparition form, and then throughout the story you gradually build her back. And at one point, little spoiler here, but it's not a plot spoiler really, he like makes her into like a wooden mannequin.
Okay,
it's quite cool. It's quite macabre, you know. And she's like, this is good, because she was like really ill before. And she's like, I can't feel anything anymore. It's a bit creepy because she can't feel touch. So she goes to like hug, and there's like nothing there. I really enjoyed it, and I do love the like the Chinese mythology. That's obviously, would you call it mythology for Chinese?
It depends what it's based on. I mean, if it's a historical era, it's different. If it involves certain characters or, you know, obviously myths and legends, and that's a bit different. How action-based is this one? Like,
have you played The Witcher 3?
No, right. So what I have played, which sprung to my mind, was like the newer Ninja Gaiden games.
Okay.
Is it like as action heavy as those?
No, not as action heavy as those.
Right.
It's more towards the Witcher end of the scale. So you'll be moving around like a town. Someone will give you a quest line. You'll head out of town, and then there'll be combat there.
Oh, fair enough.
You know, it has that whole thing where there's like little mini games built into it. There's this really good chess game actually. I think it's like a traditional Chinese game. Yeah. And it's very addictive. It's basically got to make like 3 in a row and stop them from making 3. It's quality.
I mean, the game looks good, I must say. It's one I definitely want to play at some point in the future.
There's a Play Asia of this one actually.
There is indeed, yeah. I may well pick it up. I'm going to use our code if I do. So
good
5%.
Choice.
Yeah. Why not?
Why not?
Okay, in third place for me then is New Star GP, which is a racing game, obviously Grand Prix based, and it's done with a low poly art style. It looks very much like virtual racing from back in the day, and plays very well. It has like a story mode, more like a career mode, I suppose I should say. Yeah. Where you join a team and you'll speak to the media, and you can buy upgrades for your car and what have you. I mean, I don't think that's amazing. You know, you do start to see a lot of the same story beats crop up and what have you. You know, you'll have rival races and stuff, but it didn't have to be there. And it is, you know, so I quite enjoyed that. But the races themselves are just great. I love those sort of old school, almost, you know, if you pardon the pun, drives the line of simulation and arcade. Yeah. Probably veering a little bit towards arcade, to be fair, but it does keep aspects of both, and I think it works. That merging of the two works really well.
Yeah, this one you basically kind of like almost retrospectively after it come out went and reviewed it, didn't you?
Yes.
And were pleasantly surprised by how good it was. So yeah, I think that's definitely a nice little, almost like a hidden gem, I'd say.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those games that there's definitely an audience for. But it's not necessarily a mainstream audience, but that's not to say it's not a large audience, you know. And again, if we're doing it, I might as well say that the frame rate does fluctuate, stays around 40 for the most part, as opposed to 60 elsewhere. But if you can look past that, very good game.
Okay, for me then in number 3, I am actually gonna. It's a slight change. I'm sorry, Glenn. It's okay. I'm putting Animal Well in here. Okay, so I'd say third for me is bang on for this one.
Yep.
Now the reason I say that is because obviously it had so much hype around the release. Everyone was saying it was a 10 out of 10 game, best game since sliced bread, which isn't even a game. And
it'd be a good game.
It would be a great game, wouldn't it?
ASMR game it would be.
It would, wouldn't it?
You know it would. Slicing that bread.
Slice that bread. Butter it. Bit of marmalade.
Yeah, I'd go for some marmalade, I suppose. Peanut butter would be my first port of call.
On toast?
Oh yeah, all day long. Peanut butter on toast. It rolls off the tongue, doesn't it?
Yeah, well I actually like peanut butter and jam.
Yeah,
I think it is a good combo.
I used
tasty.
to have that as a kid, and no, I don't mean. I'm not saying that you can't have it as a grown-up. I'm just saying it
as a tiny child.
My lunchbox at school. No, I just mean it hasn't occurred to me to have it since. Right. Maybe it should.
Maybe I should do it. Yeah. Get on it straight after this.
I will. I bloody will.
So anyway, yeah, Animal Well. It's a Metroidvania made by one guy. I forget his name. It's such a cool name as well. That's a shame. But it tries to do non-violent combat, and I know that's like an oxymoron. You know, so you kill people with like a firecracker will defeat the enemies and stuff like that. And then you're using I mean, it's not the least violent thing, is it, to throw a firecracker in a dog's face?
It's pretty damn violent.
Very violent.
Don't do that.
Savage. And you've got a little disc that you can throw, and you can hop on it. What's cool is like the dogs will chase the disc.
Yeah, okay, that's cool.
I can see there's something in your head. Go on. What is it?
It's best it's not said.
Oh, he's thinking something. Sorry, audience, you're never going to know. But I can see the little smile. It's a wry smile on his face. But Animal Well, I completed it fully maxed it out. I say fully maxed it out. There's a bit of extra content after the credits that I haven't yet done, but I almost fully maxed it out. And it is very good, and I can see why people love it. It's completely non-linear. You can go wherever you want. There's lots of secrets. I just didn't rate it as highly as some. I think people went a bit over the top. So that's me.
That's fair enough.
Place.
Yep, third place, lovely. Okay, into second place. I could probably say that about this game, funny enough.
Yeah.
And that's Balatro.
Oh yes, the most addictive game ever.
Yeah, and again, people have been saying it's their game of the year, and it's very close actually with my number one that you'll see in a moment. Incredible game, very addictive. It's a card-based game where you basically play poker, and you need to think about your hand, but obviously there are like multipliers and like perks that you can add to your cards that will get you better scores, and you need to beat the blind basically and keep going through the game. I've got to the final blind, like the last boss, if you like, and lost, and it's one of those where it feels impossible. Like you're looking at the number you got beat and you're like, how on earth? But then you see other people's scores and they are ludicrous. Like ludicrous. So it could be done, and that's the beauty of it. I think there's so much still in this game that I haven't discovered.
Yeah.
In that way, it reminds me of Vampire Survivors, that you can play it on a surface level and enjoy it, and then you start digging into how much more you can do and how much game is actually there, and it's a bit of an eye-opener. This reminds me of that.
I'd say this one is probably one of the most difficult games to articulate to someone that either doesn't play this genre, well, to anyone really that hasn't played it. It is one where I would say to anyone listening, if like me, you'd heard so much about it, but you were kind of like, I'm not going to enjoy that. It's one that you want to, if you're after a game just to take a punt on, take a punt on this one, because it's just so good.
Yeah, and when I reviewed this, it was much more of a early stages walkthrough than I would usually do in a review, because I think without knowing some of that stuff, it's impossible to know whether you want to buy it or not.
Yeah.
Without having a demo, But yeah, if you do, as Mark just said, take that punt. It is a great game, so addictive. And yeah, my number 2 so far for the year.
Fantastic. My number 2 then has only just come out. We've just done a review of it on the channel, and it's Beyond Good and Evil, the 20th anniversary edition. It blows my mind to think that this is over 20 years old. I think it came out in 2003 actually, and then I'm pretty sure they were planning to release this last year. I was saying some of the code in the game and things, but it really does show that some games, you look at modern games, so say take like 3D combat in adventure games. Yeah. There's still loads of games that just balls it up.
Yeah.
You're playing them, you're like, that's rubbish. Beyond Good and Evil almost pioneered 3D combat where you could switch quickly between multiple, would you call them antagonists attacking you? What would you call them? Yeah, multiple assailants, I guess, attacking you. And it's very fluid still. It is only a one-button combat system. You can hold it down to do charged attacks and things. But I was expecting it to feel super clunky and be like, oh, okay, this has aged badly. And it is a little clunky, but it's still better than 90% of the stuff they're releasing now.
Yeah, it's credit to the original game then, isn't it? How good that was. I remember this came out at a time where I'd kind of drifted out of gaming a little bit, like that early 2000s. I had a PS2, I had a GameCube, but I was, I was in my 20s then, early 20s, you're out and about. But it's always one I've looked back on and thought, that looks fun, So I'm glad to see it get a re-release, and I'm also glad to hear you say that the original game itself just holds up so well without any of the extra bits and bobs.
Yeah, it really does, and there are a lot of bits and bobs added to this one, like the reflections, the textures. Ubisoft Montpellier have done a very impressive job, in my opinion, in terms of the amount of work that's gone into it for the price. It's like 17 quid. Come on. There are other remasters from bigger companies that go for literally almost triple that price.
Yeah.
It's impressive, and it shows a labour of love. There's a history in the game, so you can have a look through how the game was created and stuff. And it's funny because they acknowledge it didn't sell nearly as well as they'd hoped it would, but it has that kind of cult following that they want to bring it back for the fans, and I got a lot of time for that.
Nice, yeah, for sure. Right, into the first place games then, and mine is Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance. I just couldn't put this anywhere but number 1, I thought about this and Balatro and the fact this had been out before, but this is just such a good game. It's made some tweaks here. Quality of life tweaks to the original game, which is included in this package, but there's also a new storyline that you can access from the start. The one thing I will say about it is that a lot of the game does play the same when you choose that alternate line, and it kind of drip feeds bits in that you'll come across as you're playing, and if you play the original you'll notice the differences. But you are seeing a lot of the same stuff again. So if you have played it before, that's maybe a bit of a downer, but I have played it before and still enjoyed it immensely this second playthrough,
So for me, this has been the first time I've ever played it.
Yeah.
And so I'm brand new to the game, doing obviously the Vengeance path, and it's absolutely incredible.
It's
like
great,
I can really see the comparisons to Pokemon. I really can, you know, in that core like loop of having a creature that you then I don't know, like blend with another one, try and get the best traits out of them. What's cool here is you can take monster traits, like you find these essences around the world hidden all over the place, and then you can put those into your character. So if you want your main protagonist to have like fire ability, you can do that. But they'll also come with intrinsic weaknesses of that monster.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very nuanced system. Kind of compared it to, what was that series where you have to have job classes for beating certain bosses?
Yeah, Bravely Default. It reminds me of that to a degree, where you are cherry picking the best bits of certain classes, but they do come with caveats. Almost like a gene pool, isn't it?
Yes.
That you'll get the strengths, but you'll get the weaknesses that come with it. And you can apply that to your character as well as the demons that fight alongside you. And you'll need to beat certain bosses because you'll be weak to them, or it's a very clever way of, I wouldn't say taking out grinding, because you do still have to grind, I feel.
Yes.
But accompanies grinding in a way that it lessens the blow, if that makes sense, you know. And I love fusing the demons together, you know, like, again, when you're playing it for review, everything is so 100 miles an hour, but when you're playing it for fun, and you can just spend literally like a good hour just looking at the demon fusion screen without even realising, you know. This is a great game. I love this game. I think this is possibly my favourite RPG on the Switch. I would just say that if you own the original, because there's no way of buying this as DLC as it currently stands, it's a bit of a choker to have to spend another 50 odd quid on it again.
I'd agree with that for sure, and I've only bought it once. My number one game of the year is a bit of a surprise to me, honestly. You know, I'm thinking of a few other games in my head. They've kind of been like swimming around for that spot. I'm going to disclaim this. I hope you don't mind, Glenn. If Eiyuden Chronicles 100 Heroes had released in perfect condition, it would be number one. It didn't, so I'm not even gonna, talk about it. It's not even on my list, but I've just mentioned it, so yeah, you see how I got away with that. So for me, number one is another Crab's Treasure. Like, I just love the idea. Well, actually, no, I didn't. Initially, I thought the idea of a Souls-like with a crab was gonna be absolute pony. Yeah. Now, I just thought it wouldn't work. I thought this is not gonna work at all, but it's cracking. Like, it shows that with these hybrid genres or these niche genres, taking them into an unusual setting can be a really effective base for a game. And this one, basically, you take the shells. The shells have a special move attached to them.
Right.
So, you know, you'd find the shot glass, which is a super hard glass, and then you can use that to kind of protect yourself. There's a tennis ball, that's very cool. So you kind of super roll, you know, it's like a super spin attack from Sonic. But it feels so fresh, and the fact that it's from such a small team, I will say, that's my line, isn't it? I will say. That's when you know I'm going to say something negative. There are a few difficulty spikes, but it is a Souls-like, you know. I know there'll be people like, of course there are difficulty spikes. Some of them are a little too difficult. And there aren't a huge amount of accessibility options, although there are some. I will say you can tailor it a little. I just enjoyed the world. It was like under the sea, you know, you're playing as your little crab guy, like you've got your little fork, choosing those different shells. You can insure your shell so that you can respawn with that. I thought that was quite a good idea.
I like the fact, having not played it, but just looking at it, that the shells are objects, like household objects. It could have just been another crab's shell that was a different colour or whatever. The fact that they had that little quirk in there immediately charms me, you know, it endears the game to me.
Yes,
just having that.
And yeah, like the currency in it is microplastics.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, it's like pointing at a very real issue without, do you know what I mean? Doing it in a clever way. Yeah. Because everyone worships these microplastics. Like every now and then a boat kind of goes over and they all stop and they worship as the plastic like just covers them in junk.
Oh, right.
And they're all like fighting for it and stuff. I thought that was a really good way of drawing attention to those kind of things.
Those,
you know?
Yeah. There we go.
Yeah, that's me.
That's 10 games, 5 each. Our favourite games of 2024 so far. Let us know what you think. Let us know which games are your favourites. Are there any we didn't mention? Obviously, we have to have played them. It goes without saying. And obviously, we have to have felt they were our favourites. You know, it's just obvious, isn't it? But please do put yours in the comment section below. What I'll do as well, I'm going to just put a link up in the right-hand corner to last year's halfway point. Just as a comparison, if you haven't seen that before, want to see what our games of last year were at this point in the year, yeah, give that a watch too. Don't forget what Mark said at the beginning. If you're looking for eShop credit, please do consider using SwitchUp.gg to get your eShop cards. Full details down below. A quick thank you to our patrons and our channel members for your continued support, and to each and every one of you for watching our videos. Take care, and until next time, happy gaming.